On this edition of City Profile, we'll be talking with longtime City Commissioner Richard Abraham. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to City Profile. I'm Tom Butler. On today's program, we have longtime City Commissioner Richard Abraham. Since 2008, consecutively, you've been a city commissioner. So this being 2018, that adds up to about 10 years to me.
Wow.
Did you ever consider that, and that's not really all.
No, and the funny thing about it, Cindy and I, we talk about this sometimes. I never really planned on a career in politics. I ran because I was ticked off about some things that were going on, and I'm like, well, heck, man, I'm paying my $50, and I'm going to get a couple of signatures, and I can do it. I can do better than that. And so that's what I did, and I won. And then once I got in, I'm like, okay, all right. What are the rules? What's the rule? And Anita Smith was the clerk at the time, and she was a great help to me. She let me know what I could do individually as a commissioner, and then she also let me know those things that I would need more of a consensus to get done. And once I figured out what the rules were, then I just had to find my way about the technical side of it. But I've enjoyed it, man. A reporter, I think it was C.D. Bradley, asked me one time why I wanted to be a city commissioner. And once I was in, and I was like, well, if I'm going to live in a city where 5 people make policy, I like to be one of them, right? So, and I've been fortunate. The folks here in the city have put enough trust in me to vote for me, and I've been there since 2008.
And so you still like it?
Oh yeah, I love it. Love it.
You're an effective commissioner, and
yeah, and it's funny because sometimes it doesn't seem that way. Sometimes it's and I think people look at that and it's like, well, your point of view didn't come across, or you were on the backside of a 4-1 vote, and so what was the point? Well, the point is to stand, is to those things that you feel passionate about, that makes sense to you, those things that you can articulate to a person, that even though you didn't get that, the vote didn't go your way, sometimes that happens. But you got to be able to, when there's an issue on the table and you feel very strongly about it, after getting the information that you need to make an intelligent decision, sometimes you have to stand, and you may stand alone. That 4-1 vote, though, doesn't just represent me, though. There's a lot of people that, even though that issue didn't go the way I would have, that I felt it should go, there's a lot of folks that, you know what, that's okay. You spoke from the heart. You spoke about that issue. That's the way we feel. And so the main thing for me over the years is I've tried to be consistent, and when you're consistent, you may not agree, a person may not agree with you at the end of the day, but when they look at the body of work, Tom, he's a stand-up guy. We haven't always agreed on everything, but he's an honorable guy. And that's what you want. You want folks in office that's going to represent the city or the state or the nation, to be folks that are reasonable, that are honorable, and have some morality to themselves.
So that brings up a question to me. Do you vote based on your personal feelings, or do you vote based on your constituents' communication with you? How do you make that decision if you don't necessarily agree with the people that are talking in your ear?
Yeah, been there a few times. Let's take, for instance, the issue we had with the Confederate statue here in Paducah. General Lloyd Tillman over at Circle Park. that came up, and it was kind of like a wave of that type of thing going on across the state, across the nation, actually. And I knew it was just only be a matter of time before that we'd have to deal with that. And that statue had been up there for 100 years. You know, girls, I live right there at the corner of 21st and Harrison, so we would go up there when the girls were small, and they would inquire about, you know, sooner or later it's going to be a conversation piece, man. It's like 20 feet tall. So,
Yeah.
so who was that guy? And so I would tell them who he was and what he did in a frame of mind that was prevalent at that time in our country. But I would always tell them this: in spite of that, the country rose above that. You know, we are here. We can go anywhere we want to go in the city. We can go into any department store. If you need to get a loan and your credit is where it needs to be, you can get a loan. All those things, it's not like that anymore. But this was a time when our country was going through some changes. Well, some people have the thought that, you know what, we need to take all of that down, move it, dismantle it, do something, just take it away. And that's a way of thinking. And I'm like, okay, but I think differently, you know. So to answer your question, there are some people, and this is the thing about when you get in that fishbowl. you no matter what you do or how you vote, there are going to be people that say, "Great job, Rich. You know, thank you for being there for us." And then you're going to have a whole other group of people that's like, "You're an idiot. What are you doing? I can't believe you're voting to leave that thing up." So at that point, you know, I guess it's a little bit of both, you know. But I've always tried to make those type of decisions not based on my own opinion or the way I feel solely, because it's not about that. I mean, you're voted to represent the whole city. Even those people that don't agree with the decision you just made, you represent them too. So at the end of the day, again, I try to be consistent. Some guy asked me during one of the elections, during the primary, that he said, "Man, you never spend a whole lot of money." He goes back and he checks the financial records and he says, "You haven't spent over $3,000 in an election since you've been." And I'm like, "Well, I've been here since 1972, right? So if I can't win an election on merit, then I probably need to be doing something else at this point." So I try to keep that in mind and try not to do anything stupid, you know. That what gets folks in trouble, man. And one of the other things is I'm a junior, so my daddy gave me his name, and he was a good man, and I don't want to do anything to tarnish that. So it's a little bit of both, I think, to answer your question.
I'm a junior too, so I
There you go.
understand where you're
And
coming
I know
from
your
on
daddy,
it.
he was a good guy.
He was a good guy. Before we get into some more issues with the city, just tell me a little bit about your family.
Okay, well, I have two daughters. Sitha, she's the oldest, and she is a nurse at Lourdes Hospital. We have four grandkids, 3 boys and a girl. Charlie's the girl. Nolan is the oldest, and then we have Bruce and Mason, and then McKinley is our youngest daughter, and she graduated from NKU, Northern Kentucky University, with a BFA in musical theater, and she's prior to going to college, she did a lot of shows right here, not only here but at the Market House, the stage she grew up on. And she is on the national Broadway tour, Beautiful. So she's never wanted to do anything else than what she's doing. And that is also a blessing, because most of us, we dabble a little bit before we fall into what we really love to do. She's never wanted to do anything but what she's doing. She still enjoys it. So I've been married to Cynthia, my partner, right, since, oh gosh, we met in '81, so we're coming up on our 35th wedding anniversary this month, actually.
Wow,
So,
congratulations.
yeah. So we're definitely in it to win it. We're not going anywhere. So it's good, man. we talk about this all the time. The house that we're living in now, we bought really for the girls so they could have more room. Well, they're gone. I'm still paying on the house. So I tease the girls all the time. You guys want to jump in and help out with this mortgage a little bit.
How's that going for you?
Yeah, we can get. Yeah, it's funny. I told you before we went on that McKinley, she invited me to New York. Well, she got me to New York after Father's Day as a Father's Day gift. And we go to see Denzel Washington and the Iceman Cometh, and we're doing all this stuff. And she was talking about how expensive the tickets were, and she goes, "You know how much money I'm spending on?" I'm like, "Whoa, time out. Wait, you owe me 188 grand." So I mean, this is a long way from squaring this up. So don't get.
Yeah, they don't think about that, do they?
Yeah, no. But we do what we got to do as dads, man.
Well, I know that the city is in the process of developing its strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
People out there might not really understand what that is. Could you explain what it is, and then we'll talk about some individual sections of it?
Well, basically, it's most companies. I go back to when I played football. What you want to do, right, Dari? This is what we're doing, but 3, 4, 5 years down the road, what do you want this to look like? So you start working on, like, for instance, neighborhoods. You look into a neighborhood. Now, folks' approach to that may be a little different. I'm more of a common sense type guy. I look at a neighborhood and what does it need? It needs sidewalks, curbs and gutters, things like that. Well, taxpayers' dollars go into that, so we should I think we should make sure that's in place. When you start looking at, for instance, like I think the city's always had since I've been downtown, had some form of a strategic plan. I think depending on the group, how fast that comes to fruition is something. Sometimes the government moves slow. So what we have now is a strategic plan, and it's got a lot of moving parts to it. And to be honest with you, some of that I'm looking at it, and we can get into some specifics. And I'm like, okay, so how is that supposed to work? You want to encourage folks to take pride in their neighborhood. Okay. We can do some things from a government standpoint. Like I said, we start with infrastructure. You want people to move into neighborhoods. If there's some houses there that's in disarray or abandoned, okay, we have ordinances about that. If the houses need raising after it gets to a certain point, we have an ordinance that says, okay, we can go in and do that. We can clean that out. No one wants to live next to a house that's abandoned with broken windows and crime and all of that. Okay, we can do that. So what else is there that we can do to encourage folks to take pride in their own property? See, for me, that's like, well, that's about. From a government standpoint, okay, we raised the dilapidated houses. We got the infrastructure going. What else can we do? That for me, that's always a little challenging, because you're talking about an individual making a choice on their own to clean up their own property. If the property around them is good and clean and neat, you would hope that would encourage you, like, oh man, I need to clean up my spot, right? I'm making this guy's house looks bad. Well, hopefully that happens, but sometimes it doesn't. So the strategic plan is you look at it where you want to be. You want to put some money in this particular pot to help the city move forward and be an inviting place for folks to come. Now, how you get there and how you do that, I think that's the point of conversation.
Well, I think a lot of things in the strategic plan are pretty important, but there's no secret Paducah's been losing population.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to encourage people to come here.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we get more into the strategic plan, what do you think that government can do to encourage people to consider Paducah, Kentucky as a place to live and raise their family?
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about that population there. And I remember whenever that population starts to dip a little bit before under 25,000, you see a lot of conversation about remembering back in the day when it was like 30 or 35, and now it's hitting around 25, 24, and you see all these red flags go up. And I've always looked at that population within the boundaries of the city. It's like, okay, all right, we got 25,000 people that live within give or take a few, that lives within the boundaries of the city. But that's not really a true indicator of the people that do business here in the city, because that day traffic, and you and I both know, we've been here long enough to know, that day traffic, that will double or triple the folks that live within the boundaries. That's a Monday through Thursday. On the weekends, it swells even more. So with that economic driver there, folks coming to Paducah, eating, spending money, that and where we're located, right off the interstate, that serves as a buffer, as far as I'm concerned, about the population. And so if we dip a little bit, folks start to get all excited about that. But where we're located, those folks come in and they're our police department will tell you a lot of the calls that they go on, our fire department, the 911 calls. A lot of that are folks going through. They're not even residents, right? But we have to provide that service because it's on our watch. So I don't really get concerned so much about that population dipping like that a little bit because of where we're strategically placed on the map, which we didn't have anything to do with. But, when you talk about the retail, you look at the retail tickets of what we do in retail, and there's a reason for that. It's a reason why Menards is coming to Paducah. And you remember the guys from St. Louis, they were like, they came through and they wanted to build this great mall experience and wanted us to pick up the tab for like $1.5 million to do some things for them. And we was like, no, we're not doing it. Well, you're going to suffer. These guys aren't coming. They're coming because of the fact of what I just said. You come to Paducah, and that's where everything is. Folks from Marshall, Graves, they all come to Paducah because that's what's going on. So that kind of keeps us. That's a buffer that we really. It's really an asset for us when it comes to the population.
All right. You mentioned the police and fire department. One of the things in the strategic plan is safety.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, of course, I want to feel safe where I live.
Exactly.
And my general impression about Paducah and McCracken County is that it's relatively safe.
Yes. I've always been the type of guy, and I say this to Chief Barnhill and Chief Kyle. You guys have jobs. Everybody can't do those jobs. Everybody can't go down a dark alley and somebody's yelling down there. You got to go. You got to go down there and help them out. You got to go down there and find out what's going on. So I want to make sure that those guys have exactly what they need to do their job. And then what happens after that? Well, if the crime rate is low, that is an asset for us when you're talking about folks moving to a particular area. I mean, I don't want to move to an area where, the crime rate or stats are through the roof and I don't feel safe. I have a family. I don't want to move to a place where my kids can't go outside. And there are some places in the country that's like that. We're not one of them. So they do a great job. The police department and the fire department, they do a great job. And so, that's one thing that you have to do to if you want folks to come to your city, make them feel safe.
All right. We've already talked about the next two items in the strategic plan, healthy neighborhoods and infrastructure, and those, in your opinion, go together.
Yeah, I mean, you have sidewalks and you have curbs and gutters, and for me, if I'm paying taxes in the city, then the infrastructure. Let me see some reflection of that. And I know you can't do everything at once. And I know that folks get impatient sometimes. Where's my street in the rotation? You know, when are you guys coming around and to get to my street? Why are you guys doing everything down in that part of town and nothing's over here? So that's always a challenge. You never get to a neighborhood quick enough, but you need to show folks that that you hear them and get there as quickly as you possibly can with the folks that with the resources that you have.
Well, I know that there was big push on Lower Town,
Mm-hmm.
big push on Fountain Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
What's the push now?
Well, it looks like I don't think there's one particular part of town. I think part of that strategic plan is not so much focused on a particular neighborhood like it was in the past, but kind of looking at the landscape as a whole. Now, some people will agree or disagree on that approach. I know that the approach that we used in Lower Town and Fountain Avenue has been relatively successful. But is that the way you want to move in the future? I think it was a good. I personally think it was a good approach. But we're kind of looking at the landscape a little different now. I know that we gave some money to I forget the name of it. Sharon Pote has an organization where they go and they help in Fountain Avenue. It's been in Fountain Avenue for a long time, where they go and help folks clean up their property. If you need a repairing on a roof or something like that, we put some money in there for that. I think that's important. If you're going to target a neighborhood, some folks you don't want folks to feel like, we're targeting your neighborhood and your house is so crappy that you need to go, and you've been there 30 years. So to have some resources there to help folks get their neighborhood, get their property up to where they want to acceptable, that's a good thing.
One of the things about infrastructure that probably seems really boring and mundane to folks, but is evidently a big deal. Stormwater management.
Yeah.
Y'all talking about that, and we're like, what? They
Yeah.
just go in the sewers and go down to the
Yeah.
river, and that's all. That's all there is to it.
And the thing about that stormwater is, when you start talking about things underground, out of sight, out of mind. And so when you start looking at it, and you hire these guys with all the degrees, and they come back and they look, this pipe right here, it's pretty much shot, and it's not handling the water flow. And we get these crazy rains, and then we see the flooding issues that we've had in certain parts of town. So you're going to say, why is that happening? And folks say, well, it's because of the construction up here, and it's all concrete now. It's running down on me. In certain parts of town, it floods more than others. So you go and you're like, oh, why is this happening? So you spend the money, and you go and you look at it, and then you find out that there are certain parts of town that the pipes and things are not sufficient to carry the amount of water when we have these crazy rains. Now, when you start talking about its management, it's not, we're going to stop the flooding in Paducah. So it's always going to do that, but you got to manage. You're trying to manage the water. So that's what that's about in layman's terms.
Gosh, that's got to be tough, because I know at my house, if I spend a bunch of money, I want people to be able to see what I've done.
Well,
and it's underground. You're not even seeing the money.
And think about it. If you talk about replacing 100-year-old pipes, okay, first, that's a big dirt pile, man. And you're going to shut some things down and then folks are going to be upset or kind of irritated about that. But, if you're going to fix it, you got to fix it. And it's not always pretty when you start digging around.
Yeah. We have about 4 minutes left, and
Wow.
I want to get to a pretty big deal that's happened in the city. And just recently, we got a new city manager.
Yes.
Can you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, we do. Jim Art, he's a relative new guy from Effingham, Illinois. I teased him the other day. We were talking about it. I said, well, when you're being recruited, and then you're like, okay, you're hired. You finish first couple of weeks, first month, so you're kind of in the honeymoon stage, And he said, well, how do you know when that's over? I said, when it's 4th and inches. When it's 4th and inches, okay, what's your call on here, coach? Because we need to be effective in this next move. So, but capable guy. He stood out in the 3 guys that we were interviewing. I think he's going to be great. But like Coach Claiborne used to say all the time, we'll see. That's pretty much it. He seems to be a real knowledgeable guy. Has a team approach to our staff. Down there, he's implemented some things that I think will bring, like Finger Food Friday. That sounds like, what is that? Well, guys get together on Friday, different departments, and we all come together in the commission chamber, and everybody brings something. I don't think we've ever done anything like that. That type of stuff I totally agree with, to get folks together and talk and feel like even though I work down in finance and you're in engineering, we never see each other, really. But on Friday we can kind of come together. So that has positive ripples.
Yeah, that's kind of neat, because you talk to people on the phone or through email or whatever, but you get face to face.
Yeah, we need more face to face these days.
Yeah. So, in the last 2 minutes, what are your plans? What is your vision? What do you still want to accomplish as a city commissioner?
Well, I'm all about people, man. I want to continue to encourage folks to be involved in their city government in any way they can. Some folks that means running for office. Some folks that means regularly writing an opinion on the opinion page. For me personally, I love serving. We have an election coming up in about 90 days. And if I'm fortunate to get elected again, I will serve that with just as much excitement and enthusiasm as I have in the past. Moving forward, 2020, I talk to my wife all the time. I said, 60 is a cool age, man. I mean, it's not too old, but it's not like, you've got some experience. So, I ran for mayor once in 2004, and Bill, he beat me. Right? So, and that's okay. But it's been a while since then, and I want to do that. I want to go for that. So, 2020 general election rolls around. I'll be throwing my hat into there to see what the folks think, and give them an opportunity. All those people like, well, if you ever need anything, let me know. All right, I'm gonna be sending all those folks a note.
I guess you are.
I'm running for mayor, so now's the time if you want to help me out.
So, are we like breaking that news, or have you been talking to people about that?
Well,
Because I want to be first. I didn't know you were thinking about that.
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So I'm going to do it. Good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. I'm going to do it. So and we'll see. We'll see what happens, man.
Richard Abraham, thank you for being with me today on City Profile. It is always a pleasure.
Yeah.
And thank you for being with us. Join us again next time. I'm Tom Butler.